Welcome on the pure wisdom ones. It is already yours. You haven't caught up yet. Pause for a second. Think about it. What if the battle was only a formality? What if you weren't really battling to win, but realized that you have already won? This is a fact. The human brain processes 11 million pieces of information per second. However, the conscious mind records just approximately 50. That suggests that you are now benefiting from events that you are unaware of. The win you've been pursuing is already in motion. The doors you believed were locked were never really locked, just waiting for you to shove. But let's get real. Winning does not always feel like winning. If it did, more people would know when they'd arrived. Instead, we are conditioned to assume that achievement must be difficult. That battle is evidence of development, and that triumph is earned through hard work and hardship. Wrong. What if I told you that the toughest part is already over? What if the things you believed disqualified you were really evidence that you made it? By the conclusion of this, you'll realize why you've already won, and all you have to do now is walk into it. And believe me, you will never look at your travel in the same way again. Number one, you buck the script of mediocrity. Most individuals spend their whole lives following a screenplay they didn't write. They get up, go to work, pay their bills, and continue the process till they die, never wondering if there was more. The world teaches them what is normal, acceptable, and safe, and they comply because it is simpler than thinking for themselves. But Utah, that script apart, you refuse to be just another cog in the system. The instant you question the system, you had already won. You opted not to live on autopilot like everyone else. You broke away from the delusion that most people believe. That was the true battle. Not proving yourself, not working until you were weary, and not asking for a place at their table. The conflict was always about whether you would accept the life that was given to you or seize the one that was really yours. And you've already made that decision. That is why you suffered. That explains why you felt out of place. That's why life appeared more difficult for you than it was for others. Because you were not designed for mediocrity. You were not wired to blend in. You were meant to stand out. And that meant encountering opposition. But here is the reality. That resistance was not indicative of failure. This was confirmation. If the world fought back when you attempted to climb, it was because your very existence disrupted the established quo. You do not threaten the system until you are larger than it. Others continue to follow directions and live in someone else's notion of success. You have already fled. You may not have all the answers yet. You may not even see the whole image. But the toughest part, breaking free, is over. That implies you've already won, whether you know or not. Everything from here on out is just catching up to the fact that you're no longer playing their game. You're playing on your own, and you won before they even grasped the rules. Number two, those who opposed you were your most open confession. The individuals who attempted to bring you down were never random barriers. They were evidence that you were unique. If you had been average, you would have fit nicely into the box they desired. They would not have cared, but the fact that they opposed you, questioned you, or attempted to stop you, that was their way of admitting that you were not destined to be like them. Nobody spends energy on things that don't important. Nobody plans against someone who is not a danger. The instant others began attacking you, whether with subtle digs, open treachery, or quiet jealousy, you should have understood you had already won. They saw something in you that they didn't have and couldn't ignore. And rather than confronting their own flaws, they decided to attack you. It was never about you. This was their own insecurity speaking. However, here is where most individuals get it wrong. They believe resistance requires them to fight back, prove themselves, or explain why they deserve a seat at the table. That is a trap. The true win is not in persuading them. It's in realizing that their opposition was only an unintentional endorsement of your authority. They wouldn't have spent their time attempting to break you if you weren't already ahead of them. Some of them attempted to make you feel small because they recognized your brilliance before you did. Others attempted to impede your way since they knew you were going someplace they couldn't reach. And which are the worst? Those who seemed to support you, but actually wished for your downfall. They saw something unstoppable in you, which worried them. You do not need their permission. You never did. Their resistance was evidence. And now that you realize what it really was, you'll never question yourself again. You went as soon as they made you their issue. Number 3, you become the lesson rather than just absorbing it. Most individuals spend their lives accumulating lessons. They read the books, heed the counsel, and keep making the same errors, expecting that one day everything would make sense. But you did not only learn the lesson, you became it. Your existence, quest, and survival. These are the lessons. While others are still figuring it out, you are live evidence of what metamorphosis looks like. Understanding and embodying something are not the same thing. Many individuals understand the concept of resilience, but when put to the test, they fail. They speak about development, yet they keep repeating the same cycles and make excuses for their inability to progress. You, on the other hand, did not just speak about change. You became the change. Every adversity you endured was more than simply a learning experience. It rewired you totally. You're not the same person you used to be, which is why you have already won. People analyze success tales to figure out what distinguishes specific persons. They don't comprehend, however, that learning does not produce actual wisdom. It stems from the way you carry yourself, thought, and move through life. It all has answers that no book can provide. Someone may spend years reading about strength, but being next to you for 5 minutes will teach them more than any lecture could. That's why people are watching you. That's why some people are inspired while others are threatened. You're not simply someone who learned. You're the lesson. You go into a room, and without saying anything, you remind them of what is possible, which is a power that most people will never possess. The instant you become the evidence, you won. There is no need to explain. There's no need to persuade anybody. The proof is in how you live, move, and refuse to return to your former self. Others are still looking for answers, but you became one, and no one can take it away. Number 4, you knew that dread was not yours to bear. Fear was not yours. It was given to you before you realized who you were. You were surrounded by folks who had embraced terror as their existence from birth. Parents, teachers, and society. They handed it down like an old, worn-out garment. I expect you to wear it without question. Be cautious. Do not take chances. Stay in line. They didn't mean to harm you. They were only replicating what had been done to them. But eventually, you discover something they never did. Fear was never supposed to be yours to bear. Most individuals spend their whole lives shackled by worries that aren't even theirs. They are afraid of failure, not because they have failed, but because someone warned them it was harmful. They are afraid to stand out, not because they lack brilliance, but because they were raised to think that being different meant being rejected. But you questioned it. You stared at the horror and wondered, where did this come from? Who warned me to be afraid? And as soon as you did that, the illusion began to break. Fear functions best when it is unchallenged. It requires you to embrace it blindly and believe it without proof. But once you recognized it for what it was, a tool to keep you tiny, manageable, and predictable, it lost its hold on you. You learned that fear was not a universal fact. It was a rewritable narrative. So you stopped carrying it. The world is still full of individuals who live by fear and regulations, making choices based on what may go wrong rather than what could go right. But you are no longer one of them. You have already won the game. They are completely unaware that they have been ensnared. Nothing can dominate you once fear is gone, and this makes you unstoppable. Number 5, you stopped being a beggar and became the source. There was a moment when you believed you needed anything other than yourself to be whole. You sought affirmation from others who knew nothing about themselves, and permission to embrace your magnificence. You believed that if you could just prove yourself enough, if you did all the right things, the world would eventually acknowledge your value and give you what you deserved. But no matter how hard you tried, it wasn't enough. Because the reality is the world does not provide power. It only recognizes those who have already claimed it. Then something changed. You were bored of waiting. You were weary of shrinking, wishing, and pleading for things that were always supposed to come from inside. You stopped seeking affirmation and became your own validation. You stopped waiting for love and became it. You stopped asking for permission to be great and just embraced your magnificence. That shift, that was the moment you won. People can perceive the difference. Previously, seeking approval seemed incomplete. But now you don't have to prove yourself. You're yourself, and that alone warrants respect. You come into a room, and people sense your presence without having to say anything. You don't need to persuade anybody of your worth, since your enthusiasm speaks for itself. Those who formerly neglected you, they see you now. Those who formerly disregarded you, they wish they'd paid attention. But the irony, by the time they notice, you don't need them to, because you have become the source. You have become what you were looking for all along, and it is a power that cannot be taken away. Number 6, you were put to the test, and you refuse to give up. Life has a way of putting those who are intended for greater things to the test. It does not come with a notice or warning. It just smacks hard and without mercy. Most people do not make it through. They fold. They quit. They persuaded themselves that maybe they were never intended to be great after all. But you did not break. You took the blows, feeling the weight of every disappointment, defeat, and betrayal. And you kept going. That was the exam. Not to see whether you would win quickly, but to see if you would persevere, even when it seemed you were losing. Because the fact is that most individuals only fight when the odds are on their side. They keep continuing for as long as it is convenient and pleasant. However, when life adds actual strain, they crumble. You did not. You bent. You struggled. But never let life shatter you. And that is why you have already won. It didn't matter how powerful you were when things were simple. It was about how steadfast you stayed when everything came apart. Every time, you might have given up. But haven't you proven something that most people will never do? You were designed differently. You were made to withstand, outlive, and survive storms that would have devastated others. Most individuals will never be challenged in the same manner that you were. Instead of allowing those exams define you, you turn them into confirmation of who you are. The scars, these are not symptoms of weakness. They are proof that you stood in the fire and did not let it devour you. And now, because you did not fold, because you did not succumb, life has no option but to acknowledge you as the person who refused to be defeated. You were not only tested, you've passed, and nothing can take away what you already have. Number 7, you did not merely heal. You overcame the wound. The majority of individuals want healing. They want to relieve the agony, shut the wound, and move on. But they don't comprehend that mending isn't enough. Because if you're the same person who was injured before, you might be hurt again. If you still have the same thinking, habits, and emotional triggers, then life might bring that anguish back in a new form. That is why so many individuals believe they have recovered, only to find themselves in the same circumstances, dealing with the same heartbreaks, betrayals, and hardships. They repaired the surface, but nothing altered at the core. You did not merely heal. You overcame the wound. You took on a new identity, someone who could not be wounded in the same manner again. Things that used to shatter you no longer have an impact on you. People who formerly had control over you don't recognize the version of you that exists now, because the version of you that was susceptible to that anguish no longer exists. You didn't merely apply a bandage on it. You become someone who no longer need one. This is why you have already won. Not because the agony never occurred, but because you ensured it never happened again. Not like that. Not to you. You've broken the cycle. You achieved a higher level. You evolved into the kind of person who approaches life with a new sense of power, knowledge, and tranquility. Because you're not responding to old wounds anymore. You don't react to what used to harm you. You no longer dread what once shattered you. Most folks are just attempting to return to who they were before the hardship. But you evolved into a better person than you were before. That is why the past will never affect you again. You did not only survive, you developed. And there is no going back. Number 8. You were the quiet response to their loud doubts. Doubt is loud. It is met with laughing, derision, and unwanted suggestions from individuals who have never had the bravery to pursue their own goals. They questioned you, undervalued you, and demonstrated that they did not believe in you. Perhaps they believed you were dreaming too big. Perhaps they expected you to fail, as they did privately. Perhaps they just wanted someone to look down on to feel better about their own stagnating lives. Whatever their motives, they expressed their reservations. But you never responded with words. You never spent energy attempting to persuade them. Instead, you accomplished something considerably more powerful. You allow your outcomes to speak for themselves. And now you are the solution to every question they have ever had. You did not argue. You became undeniable. You did not seek their consent. You moved silently, relying only on the result as evidence. That was the type of win they never expected. People like them want you to respond, defend yourself, and seek approval from them. However, by refusing to interact and instead focusing on developing, expanding, and winning, you deprive them of power. The same folks who laughed are now observing silently. The people who questioned you are now understanding that they were never competent to judge you in the first place. The irony. Now, they're attempting to find out how you accomplished it. They're now watching you, analyzing you, and in some instances, wishing they had backed you when the opportunity arose. But none of it matters now, since you don't need their belief. You never did. You won without saying anything, without seeking vengeance or affirmation. The minute you became live evidence that they were incorrect, you hushed all doubts by just being who you were supposed to be. And it is a level of power they can never comprehend. Number 9, you saw that losing was an illusion, not a win. Loss is the biggest fallacy. It deceives individuals into feeling they've been denied something worthwhile when, in fact, they have just been diverted. You used to believe in losing. You believed that some people, circumstances, and situations were destined to remain. And when they didn't, it seemed like a disappointment. Perhaps you felt unfairly treated or as if something you worked hard for had been taken away. But suddenly it clicked. You learned that what is genuinely yours will never be gone. Think about it. How could it have been intended for you if someone departed, something fell apart, or an opportunity passed you by? If it actually belonged to you, wouldn't it have remained? The fact that it didn't suggests it was never in line with your evolving personality. It may have suited a previous version of you, but it had no place in your future. Once you realized this, you stopped mourning what was never yours to keep and began claiming what was always intended for you. That move altered everything, since most individuals spend years lamenting things that weren't meant to last. They cling to expired relationships, outmoded aspirations, and prior identities, unaware that clinging on to what has passed prevents them from obtaining what is actually theirs. But you let go. You stopped attempting to resurrect something that was already dead. As a result, you freed up room for something bigger. That is why you have already won, while others continue to believe they have lost. You see the truth. You never really lost anything. What was left would always depart. What remained was always intended to stay. And what's next? It's yours in a manner that no loss will ever take away. Number 10. You uncovered the falsehoods that held people captive. The world is based on well-constructed falsehoods. Lies are meant to keep individuals tiny, docile, and terrified to challenge the system from the minute they are born. You are fed a script. Follow the rules. Play it safe. Do not challenge authority. Success looks like this. Happiness stems from it. They never encouraged you to think for yourself. They wanted you to conform. And most people do. They embrace the illusions as reality, unaware that they were programmed to remain in place. They seek objectives they never establish for themselves, live unfulfilling lives, and wonder why they are constantly empty. But you saw through it. You spotted the flaws in the system, contradictions in what they told you. And once you realized the reality, there was no turning back. That was your true win. Not money, not fame, not status, but awareness. Because awareness is what genuinely differentiates the mighty from the helpless. When you realize the game being played, you stop being a piece on the board and start making the movements. What's more hazardous than someone who is uncontrollable? Someone who exposes the control system. Maybe you didn't have to say anything. Perhaps just living your truth and refusing to comply prompted others to reconsider their own beliefs. You became evidence that there is another way. That is why some people adore you while others dislike you. Because as you break free, others are forced to confront their own shackles. Some people will be motivated to follow. Others will battle to protect their delusions. But in any case, you can't go unnoticed while others are still imprisoned in a world designed for them. You have already fled. You can see the strings that tie them down, but they're no longer tied to you. And that's a much better win than anything the system could ever provide. Because once you wake up, you never go back asleep. Number 11. You didn't just survive. You became untouchable. Most individuals believe that survival is the aim. They feel that if they can simply get through the trials and withstand the suffering, they will be successful. But surviving is just the first step. Because what good is survival if you're still vulnerable? If one betrayal can still upset you, and one failure can still make you doubt yourself. If you are still governed by fear, doubt, or others' views, you have not fully won. You've just averted losing, but you did not prevent its survival. You became untouchable, not because life became easier, not because awful things ceased occurring, but because nothing outside of you had the ability to destroy what you had constructed inside yourself. You had reached a point where no setback could make you quit up. No betrayal could turn you sour. No loss could make you feel inadequate. You've stopped responding. Stop taking things personally. Stop devoting your efforts to things that do not worth it. That shift, that was your true win. People still test you. Life is still testing you. But now, nothing moves you. You do not spend time demonstrating yourself. You don't get involved in pointless conflicts. You don't need vengeance, validation, or closure. You have outgrown all of that. You are now playing a new game, one in which your peace is invincible. Your confidence is unshakable, and your vision is unstoppable. This is why you have already won. Because others are still caught up in their emotions, responding to everything, and allowing events to determine their value. You've surpassed all of it. You're not simply surviving anymore. You are dominant, and nothing can bring you back to who you were before. Number 12. You were the storm they were unable to forecast. People like things that they can foresee. They like it when people fit into tidy little boxes, obey the rules, and perform their designated roles. It gives them comfort. It helps them feel in control. In their views, you are meant to be one of them. You were meant to keep little, quiet, and in your place. They thought they understood who you were, what you were capable of, and where your boundaries lay. But they had no clue because while they were busy underestimating you, you were growing into something they could never have predicted. You weren't just growing, you were evolving. You weren't just adapting, you were rewriting the whole game. And by the time they noticed you weren't following their rules, it was too late. You had already exceeded their expectations, transcended their restrictions, and advanced beyond their grasp. That's what bothers them the most. Not only did they not anticipate your accomplishment, but they also did not see it coming. They cannot label you. They don't understand what motivates you, how you keep winning, and why nothing seems to stop you. You become something beyond their comprehension, an unexpected force, a storm they didn't foresee. Nothing is more powerful than someone who cannot be controlled. They'll attempt to explain, justify, and behave as if they knew you'd succeed. But deep down, they understand the reality. They made a mistake in their calculations. They assumed you'd remain where they left you. They thought they had you figured out, but they were mistaken. You did not merely ascend. You became unstoppable. They no longer have control over what occurs next. Do you? Number 13. You made peace with what killed others. Pain has the ability to shatter individuals. Some never recover. Some become bitter, spiteful, or trapped in a cycle of self-pity. They let their heartbreaks define them. The betrayals poisoned them, and the failures persuaded them they were not cut out for more. They allow their experiences to form who they become. Finally, they never make any real progress. But you took what should have killed you and turned it into your strength. You did not just endure your anguish. You made peace with it. You stopped questioning why it occurred and began exploiting it. Every heartache was intended to shatter you. It simply enhanced your understanding. Every failure that was designed to embarrass you really honed your plan. Every betrayal was intended to leave you shattered. It just made you invincible. What wrecked others became the catalyst for your own refinement. That was the moment you won. Because most individuals avoid, conceal, or allow their suffering to devour them. But you confronted it. You sat with it. You learned from it. You refused to let it turn you resentful. Instead, you let it improve you. You discovered that everything designed to damage you was instead shaping you into something more powerful than anybody could have expected. That is why you are distinct. That's why nothing can shake you as it does others. You do not bear the weight of your history as a burden. You carry it like a weapon. You used every scar as a source of strength and every setback as a stepping stone. And now, while others are still stuck in hatred, tormented by what occurred, you've already moved on, not only as a survivor, but as someone who turned the same things that were supposed to break them into fuel. And that is why you have already won. Number 14. You saw the end before they realized it had begun. Most individuals go through life responding. They wait for evidence before believing, for results before committing, and for permission before taking action. But you saw the end long before it began. You did not need validation, confirmation, or outside reassurance. You already knew. While others hesitated, questioned, and second-guessed themselves, you acted with confidence. And that is precisely why you did. This was not arrogance. It was not a hallucination. It was an alignment. You understood something that most people never do. Reality follows beliefs, not the other way around. The world does not give you everything you desire. It offers you what you want, what you represent, and what you pretend is already yours. You claimed it long before anybody else knew what was going on, while they were still figuring out the regulations. You'd already won the game. That's why nothing moved you. The failures did not cause you to doubt yourself. The delays did not cause you to doubt. You were not intimidated by the resistance, since you did not expect to succeed. You were strolling through it. You conducted yourself as if triumph was certain, because you thought it was, and the confidence altered everything. When they understood what was going on, it was too late. They were still playing catch-up. I'm still trying to figure out how you moved so confidently and I'm still predicting your next move at the age of 10. Moves forward. And the reality is they never had a chance because you weren't just pursuing success. You were living it. You were not hoping to win. You were moving as if everything was already done. That is the ultimate power, knowing how the tale will conclude before anybody else knows it has started. You don't just win. You define the game itself. The fact is that you were never playing only to win. You were always meant to. Every obstacle, setback, and moment of uncertainty was never evidence of your loss. It was evidence of your metamorphosis, because what others perceived as difficulties, you saw as stepping stones, which they misinterpreted for losses. You recognized that everything they believed would break you simply made you stronger. You didn't just endure. You developed. You didn't just prove them incorrect. You rendered their doubts unimportant. You did not merely heal. You outgrew everything that used to keep you back. And now you are live evidence that the game was never about achieving triumph. It was about being the kind of person who achieved victory before the rest of the world caught up. That's why you already have it. Not because you awaited permission. Not because you required affirmation, but because you went into it before anybody else did. You became the solution to every question. They never saw the storm coming. The power that cannot be halted. The most powerful portion. You didn't need to yell it. You didn't need to prove it. You've simply become it. So, let them ponder. Allow them to analyze. Allow them to try and find out how you accomplished it. The fact is that they were never meant to comprehend, since this was not their trip. That was yours. And you have already won. If this message touched you deeply, if you felt something change within you, don't keep it to yourself. Spread it. Hit the like button. Please leave a remark and share with someone who needs to hear it. And if you're ready for more raw, unabashed truth that challenges everything you thought you knew, subscribe to the channel and enable alerts. This isn't just content. It is a movement. And believe me, you do not want to miss what comes next. Your adventure is not done. It's just getting started. So lock in, stay connected, and let's continue to win together. God bless you. If you're enjoying the content on Pure Wisdom and find value in the messages we share, I encourage you to subscribe. Based on the latest analytics, 93.9% of viewers are watching without subscribing. By subscribing, you not only stay updated with new content, but also support the channel's growth, allowing us to continue spreading wisdom for the chosen ones. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an important message. Let's build this community together.